the music going on. There we go. I, I always gotta wait for our show tune. It is the.
Yep.
That theme music kind of reminds me a little bit of like Arrowverse, particularly the Arrow theme. It's got that little bum 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 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Well, hello YouTube and wherever you are listening to this one. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priest of the geeks. I am Kevin Schaefer. Here joining me today for another comic book catch-up, Andy Walsh. Andy, how are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm doing well. Thanks. How are you?
Doing well. I say it every time, but I love these backgrounds. I know I think we've only done like one, maybe two recordings, I think. But like, I love that you've got the like, you look like just like Professor X, like with the background going on there. So it's great. Because the headphones, it could be like Cerebro.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited to get into this one. I know you're a big comic book buff, and so I'm excited to hear your picks today. But before we do that, so what, Andy? What are some things you're geeking out on, whether it be other comics or any other media?
Yeah. Only Murders in the Building season
Yes.
4 kicked off a couple weeks ago. My wife and I are huge fans of that show, so that's been very exciting. I've got a WhatsApp group where we share all kinds of crazy theories and so forth. So that's always a fun time of year when that comes around. The last episode of something, I think it was a What's News episode I was on, and I had to admit that I hadn't seen The Acolyte, and so I've remedied that. I really enjoyed that show. I'm really sad to hear that we only get half of that story or however much, because it definitely ended in a to be continued kind of mode. Still, I thought the lightsaber action and even the unarmed combat action was really cool to see. It had some cool ideas, and so yeah, I really enjoyed catching up on that, and feel bad that I didn't help that I didn't watch it live, so that maybe it helped boost the renewal chances.
Man, it's tough though. I mean, I just feel bad for a lot of streaming shows today. They have such like a limited window to they have to gain like a specific algorithm and all that to get going. But I wonder though if they'll continue the story maybe in novels or comics or something, because it does leave you hanging. But yeah.
Yeah, comic series would be a great way to continue the story.
Yeah.
Unlimited budget for action and all of that. So
yeah. Well, great picks, and you and I are very in sync. Actually, Only Murders in the Building is one I had on my list. I love that show as well. Honestly, it's one that keeps getting better. I said last season was probably my favorite, and then now I think this season so far is easily between not just like the celebrity guests on this season, like Eugene Levy and Kumail Nanjiani, but like the story with this one. I won't spoil for people who aren't caught up, like who the murder victim is, but instead of being like someone that you didn't know, this is a character that has been around for a while and you do know and you automatically have a connection with. So I like that angle. The other thing is that and this isn't a huge spoiler because it's in the trailers, but the storyline in the season is that a Hollywood studio is making a movie of the podcast, which I love that concept, and I think they're doing so many creative things with it. So absolutely 100% agree. I love that show so much, and you could not ask for a better trio of Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez. So yeah, it's my happy place on Tuesdays. The other one I'll mention really quick is actually an album right now. So I think I got to talk to Joshua if he's listened to this, but Disney put out an album that it's called A Whole New Sound, and it's covers of classic Disney songs performed by early 2000s emo bands. So you have like Simple Plan doing Can You Feel the Love Tonight and We the Kings doing Go the Distance. It is so good. And I've been listening to that on repeat for the past couple weeks. So I've been telling a ton of people about that because it is just a delightful listen. And I already have ideas for volume 2, which like hopefully it's popular enough that they will keep doing it because I love the idea. But definitely go if you like anything like, I mean, it's literally a gift to millennials. It's combining emo bands with like all the Disney songs we grew up on too. So I love it. But yeah, so excellent picks. But yeah, so Only Murders in the Building. If you're not watching, oh, it's so good. So awesome. Well, Andy, that was great. And yeah, moving on again, this is Comicbook Ketchup, where we just kind of connect once a month and talk about what comics we've been reading, maybe discussing some of the themes in them, and really just hoping to provide some good recommendations. So, Andy, I look forward to your pick. So we'll go ahead and start. I believe. Okay, so this I'm going first here. So, but Andy, are you familiar at all with the Nice House by the Lake and now by the Sea series?
I feel like you have brought it up on a previous
Yeah,
episode,
yeah.
but that is the extent of my familiarity. I am
No
not much
worries.
of a horror comic
Sure.
guy, so yeah.
And it's interesting because I really got into horror more like in college, particularly, and then in the last like and 10-ish years or so is when like just a lot of different creator on stuff, and I got more into horror. But James Tinian the fourth became one of my favorite writers, and he, I mean, he's known for his horror stuff, but he also writes some great fantasy. He had a Batman run. He's done like a little bit of everything, but horror is like his niche. There, him and Scott Snyder have very similar styles in that respect. But Nice House on the Lake and now Nice House by the Sea, which I'll get to in a sec, like is the sequel series and companion series to it. But yes, I have talked about it on the podcast before. Nice House on the Lake, I could not recommend enough. So written by James Tinian the fourth and illustrated by Alvaro Martinez Bueno. And the concept of that book is that it is set in the apocalypse, but this kind of mysterious kind of friend is in the first issue. He invites 12 companions from like different parts of his life, some that he grew up with in high school, others he knew in college, others he knew, in his 20s. And he invites them all to this luxurious lake house to spend a weekend there. And, some of them know each other, some of them are complete strangers. And he's kind of like handpicked them for this kind of like getaway retreat. And they stay at this amazing lake house that's very secluded. But what happens is that they get there and the apocalypse ensues. So the world ends and they are left. And this is sort of a like limbo state for them where they have to spend an eternity there, like in this, and like they, have infinite resource to books, art, food, all this stuff, but they are stuck together. And it's a Nice House on the Lake was very much about unraveling that mystery. These companions did not know that their friend, what his name, Walter in that one, is this like alien Illuminati figure who has chosen them to be survivors of the apocalypse. And so a lot of that book is unraveling that mystery. Nice House by the Sea, which just came out this summer, and I think it's 2 issues in. I just got to read the first one. It was a highly anticipated series for me. And in this book, so same universe, but the difference here is that it's still 12 companions being brought to this luxurious resort type setting. The difference, though, is that they know what's going on. So like you don't have the mystery element here in this book. They've already explored all that. They're in this world, and the difference too is that in Nice House on the Lake, so Walter, he was assigned to choose the best of humanity to survive and to be kept here. But instead, he chose a more motley group of people he knew from his life. So these were more people he cared about rather than necessarily the quote unquote best of humanity. In this one, the alien that's in this group does his job. And so he's choosing very elitist people. So you have here, there's like a renowned author, a renowned actor, a renowned singer, doctor, etc. All these individuals that are used to receiving accolades and acclaim from everyone and live very wealthy elitist lifestyles. So it immediately provides a different angle there to explore. And the first issue is really just kind of an intro into that. And it does, as far as how it connects to the characters from the first one, I don't want to spoil it, but it establishes that connection on the last page of this issue. And it's a really intriguing hook. But I just love this series. I know I talked about it before, but it is that it feels much a very COVID type inspired book where dealing with like isolation and loneliness and when the world comes to a halt, how do people that are suddenly thrust together survive? And I think with Nice House by the Sea, it's going to examine more things like social class and, and like, like I said, this elitist background and how that plays out. And, with also, I'm really curious to see what's kind of where the story will go from here in terms of what their end game will be. They know what's going on, so it's not so much about trying to unravel the mystery, but more of how do they work with each other? Can they coexist? Can they cohabitat like this? And there's still very much that horror sci-fi atmosphere. But it's a gorgeous book throughout. If you haven't looked at I would recommend it solely on the art, but the writing is just as good as well. But it's such a fascinating series. I know. And even for non-horror buffs, I just think there's a lot of really great thematic material to explore here. And it, again, asks those big questions of like, how do we confront these existential scenarios and deal with each other, personalities. I could go on and on, but it is just such a good book. And I was really excited that, because I think initially they announced Nice House on the Lake as just this contained series, but there was room to like explore more of this world. And I'm really excited to see it in this series with new characters, new concept, but same universe and very much a continuation of the story. So I would say with this one, though, you definitely need to read Nice House on the Lake first, because this doesn't do really any kind of like catching you up or anything. It throws you right into this world. And again, it has that connection to the characters from previous. So it's very much a sequel book, but could not recommend it more. This is a fantastic universe. It's beautifully written, gorgeous art. So I don't know if I convinced you at all. I know you're not like into horror at all, but this is one I try to like sell as many people on.
Yeah. Is there like a hell is other people kind of vibe to it that, we're talking about how these people being kind of stuck together indefinitely?
That, and also in this one, they're playing with like, enchanted youth and like trying to preserve, like beauty and perfection. So I think the themes are going to be explored there. There's definitely a lot of that. Yeah. Particularly, I mean, in this issue, we're just getting to introduce these characters. So I don't know totally how they're going to interact. In the first one, all the characters brought a lot of baggage with them. And particularly some of them grew up together and their friendships fell apart, their relationships fell apart. So there was a lot of that in that first series. With this one, again, it's harder to tell because they kind of already know what's going on and they're used to kind of this like I guess they're just kind of like, yeah, like wanting to decide what to do with the time they have. But there is definitely that the toxicity of the people trying to manage and particularly when it's strangers. But in this case, it's rich, wealthy people thrust together. I think there's a lot of room to explore there. I don't know if you've watched like The White Lotus on Max, but there's an element of that too, where like that show is about that explores wealth and class and privilege, and it takes place on this luxurious island, and there's a murder mystery. So there's definite themes from there. But yeah, it's definitely people interacting, and how they deal with the apocalypse and with each other. That's definitely a prevalent theme throughout.
Yeah. The other thing it's sounding like maybe it might have some similarities to is there was a show called A Murder at the End of the World.
Oh yeah.
Britt Marling, and I forget who else was in it. She was kind of one of the main creative forces behind it. And I want to say that was on FX.
I think you're right. I know what you're talking. I've not seen it, but it does have like that vibe. I mean, there's a lot of different like post-apocalyptic you could relate it to.
Yeah, so I watched that show and I thought that was interesting. So maybe
yeah.
I'll have to see if I can get see if the library or something has a copy. To dip my toe in and see if I want to.
I think it's a good idea. Like, I mean, get the trade of the first because Nice House on the Lake is only 2 trades. But yeah, I would check out the first one, see what you think. I mean, It is very graphic at that, and like, but it's, I would say, never explicit or anything. Like, I mean, it's not graphic for the sake of it. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it is a very like dark universe, all that. But there's such poignant themes about humanity and relationships and power and all these things. And it is horrifying, and the imagery there. But yeah, it was one I just couldn't put down. I think that you see so much like Stephen King influence here, and it can easily be adapted into a show. I think I know James Tinian has Something is Killing the Children series in development, which that's one of his most popular books as well. But this would be a great like HBO series or Apple TV or whatever.
Cool.
But yeah, so Nice House of Fantasy again, highly recommend. Definitely read On the Lake first, but that is my first pick. So definitely a book I'd anticipated for a while, and I'm excited that it's out. And
Cool.
so
Are we ready to move on?
let's do it. I want to hear your pick.
Okay. So my first book is staying on brand. Exceptional X-Men #1 came out. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? But it's the last of the three kind of flagship books of this new X-Men relaunch.
Mm-hmm.
So they had their big Krakoa era, architected by Jonathan Hickman, and then Jerry Duggan and Kieran Gillen and a bunch of folks, and that wrapped up uh, earlier this year. And then they took like 3 weeks off or something like that, and then they've kind of slowly been trickling out new books. So we had X-Men, and then we had Uncanny X-Men, and now we have Exceptional X-Men. And this one, I think, will ultimately be more of the school kind of training book. Um, you can see this is a variant cover, but you can see on the cover there's Emma Frost and Kitty Pryde, and then three new characters who they're going to kind of take under their wing. This first issue is almost exclusively a Kitty Pryde issue. We get her point of view, and we meet one of those three characters, the young woman in the lower right with the pink hair and the gold skin. Um, and so Kitty, when we start the issue, Kitty is tending bar in Chicago, something that she had done once before in the like early to mid 2000s, when she kind of wanted to get a break from the X-Men. And she's back in that kind of mode of I want to get as far away from the X-Men and all their shenanigans and the hatred that that the world has for them, and fear, right? And just kind of live a normal life for a bit. And that lasts all of about 12 pages, right, before she uh, finds herself in a situation where this young lady is being harassed. Um, in an otherwise very solid book, with some great art. There is a weird storytelling issue at that moment, which is unfortunate because it's kind of a critical uh, beat in the story because they're at a concert and this um, girl is trying to get in, and the bouncer is telling her that she can't get in even though she has a ticket. And it's not really at all clear why. Like that's kind of the it. There's clearly anti-mutant bias that ultimately plays into it as the situation unfolds, but uh, that it's not she's not obviously a mutant um, when she's being told that she can't get in, and so it's a little bit fuzzy. But otherwise, you get the gist that right that mutants are continually being harassed, that the world's tolerance for mutants is at kind of really a low point. And so Kitty sees that this young girl in trouble and realizes that she has to do something and steps in and uses her ability to phase through things to become immaterial to whisk this girl away without anybody being harmed. Um, and kind of gives her has a mentoring moment of giving her some insight into what it's like to be a mutant, and is it something to be proud of? It's something to hide? All those kinds of questions, and through their conversations, Kitty realizes that maybe she still has something left to give to the mutant community. Maybe she wants to help this kid, and so they don't really there's no formal like to me, my X-Men kind of moment at the end, where this girl's recruited to a school or anything like that. It ends very much with Kitty's gone back to her job, this girl's gone back to her home and her school situation, all that. But there's clearly a connection there. Um, and then at the very end, Emma Frost appears on a couple pages, sort of telepathically checking in on various X-Men characters, and decides that Kitty Pryde is a, is the most interesting. It has the most interesting things going on, and so she wants to reconnect with Kitty. And that's kind of where it ends. So we haven't. There's still two of these new characters on this cover yet to meet, but presumably that will be the next couple issues. Um, and I'm not sure who else. It remains to be seen if there will be other regular cast members, or if it's just the five of them will be the core of the book. But that seems to be the main focus, right? Is that they'll be training these next generation of mutants in this new but familiar kind of situation of the X-Men scattered a bit, and the world very much antagonistic to them. Um, I really enjoy, Kitty. Oddly enough, Pryde is one of those characters that kind of passed me by a little bit when I first got into the X-Men.
Mhm.
So I started reading the X-Men in the early '90s, when she was off in Excalibur, and that, I don't know, there was something about the mystical British nature of it that just didn't really grab me. So I wasn't a big reader of that book. She wasn't in the cartoon, um, and so yeah, she didn't. I didn't really click as a Kitty fan or anything like that in my early X-Men days. Um, but she's been in some interesting stories since then. Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men did some interesting things with her. And then the most recent Marauders book during the Krakoa era, she and Emma Frost had an interesting kind of double act. Um, and that's exciting to see that continue. It was a little odd because this book kind of makes it seem like they they've been estranged or whatever, and yet the last time we saw them, they were very much working together and so forth. So it's a little bit of like, it feels like we're rediscovering the same thing that we discovered last time around. But yeah, I think Kitty's a good character to focus on, and I think it'll be good to give her more of that kind of mentoring role. It's nice to see. It's one of the nice things about the X-Men is that they do actually, some of them do get to change over time. Um, they don't always reset back to the same status quo. There is some opportunity for growth and change, and so this looks to be a good next step in the development of Kitty Pryde. Beyond that, the Emma Frost of it all is a bit hard to assess after the first issue, but yeah, I think it was a good start, and one of the better, I think one of the better books of the relaunch. My overall vibe from the relaunch is that it's much darker than I expected. Um, the last 6 months of the Krakoa era were pretty grim with all the Fall of X stuff, because everything was kind of everything that they built was kind of coming down around their ears. Um, and so I thought that there would be more of a, like, we need a palate cleanser, we need something a little bit more bright and cheerful and optimistic. But they pretty much picked up where they left off in terms of the grim and dour and pessimistic tone. So it was, and this book kind of starts there too, with Kitty's very much traumatized and wanting nothing to do with any of that, which is understandable, and as a reader, a very relatable perspective. Like, yeah, I would like to get away from everything that the X-Men just went through as well. Um, so yeah, so I think, but bringing in some younger characters, having Kitty kind of come around and find something to be positive about, made it a bit more of a fun and optimistic place to end on, as opposed to some of the other books. So yeah, I think it was a pretty solid number one, and looking forward to seeing where this one goes.
It sounds fun, and I'm kind of. It reminded me a little bit of. Um, I don't know if you watched X-Men Evolution growing up. That was a big one I grew up on, the cartoon.
I watched a little bit of it, but that was like when I was in college and had less time to watch TV.
Yeah, sure. That was like I get around it, but like that one did more of like okay, the mutants were more teenagers there, and so like they're actually like going to school, still having to like normalize the part. They're not always being recruited to do heavy mission stuff. Yeah, like obviously Wolverine's still older, but like but like Cyclops, Jean, Kitty, everyone are in the teenager, and like it was a fun kind of way to mirror the movies a little bit, but still very much had its own vibe. But I really liked that as of like, yeah, explore the kind of teenage characters here. How do their lives look like apart from just the X-Men, and how can I really also like the idea of bringing Kitty into a mentor role here, and like you said, evolving and kind of building a new kind of way for mutants and finding those people that are gifted, but maybe not doing. See, as like you said, after everything they go through the Krakoa era, like trying to pave a new way forward. But this one does sound a lot of fun. Like, if you had so is this one, and then there were two others from the new relaunch. Do you have a favorite so far, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the books. There have been some other sort of secondary titles, and I think of all the books, my favorite has been the NYX book.
Okay.
Um, so that one has Kamala Khan
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Laura Kinney and Anol and um, well, those have been some of the main characters, but that so that one is sort of uh, oh, and one of the cuckoos, I think Sophie,
Okay.
uh, yeah, and so the first issue was was mostly focused on Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan.
Yeah.
Um, she, so she's obviously Jersey City's favorite superhero, and that's always been her turf. But she's venturing into New York City, so the book is kind of she's going to school in New York City. She's still living in Jersey City, and so she's kind of doing the bridge and tunnel commute thing. But so it has her in New York City, kind of finding her way and connecting with some of the other X Men. That's where Sophie Cuckoo comes in. Is they run into each other? They're going to school together. Prodigy is there too. He's actually a teacher um, in the class that they're taking, and um, yeah, so that was kind of the introductory issue, and then the second issue was focused primarily on Laura Kinney and what she's up to in New York. But yeah, it's kind of there's definitely a superhero angle to it, right? There's a villainous plot and things like that going on. But there's also just a lot of like it's kind of got that Spider-Man vibe of, oh, but I also have to go to class and balance being a teenager and having a social life and all that. And I like that. I like when we get to see that these characters living lives and doing other things than just saving the universe from the latest mind-bending cosmic threat. Um, and so yeah, so I think that's been my favorite. Just it's a good mix of characters. I'm really excited about Ms. Marvel kind of joining the ranks of the X-Men world. And so yeah, that one's been fun. Of the three main books, yeah, I think this one might be the one that I'm most interested in. Um, X-Men X-Men has been pretty solid. The first issue of X-Men didn't really grab me, but it's picked up in the second and third issues. Um, and yeah, still kind of figuring out Uncanny. We've had two issues of that, and yeah, still not really sure exactly what the what's going on there. But I mean, it's Gail Simone, so I mean they've got solid people on all these books. So
Who's on the roster on Uncanny?
Uncanny is Nightcrawler and Gambit and Rogue and Wolverine. And then they're also introducing some newer characters, some new characters
Nice.
there as well. But yeah, those are the main kind of familiar X Men characters on that book. And then just X Men is Cyclops and Beast and Magneto in a floating wheelchair, and um, who else is in that book? Um, yeah, Cyclops and Beast, um, Kid Omega, and I'm forgetting one or two other main characters, but yeah, it's kind of that one's more of an oddball lineup, and they're in Alaska, because kind of isolated from everything else. They're in this little town in Alaska, living in a sentinel factory that had been used by Orcus in the Krakoa era to build sentinels, and now they're trying to like reclaim it and hang out there. Uh, and yeah, they seem to be the team that's dealing with the sort of big level threats. And then in Uncanny, that team is kind of down in the south, in like the New Orleans, Louisiana area, um, trying to be maybe um, the more local team, um, right? And and so far dealing with like this other group of kids, but yeah, like I said, it's a little unclear what that book is gonna turn into, and then this one feels like it'll be more of the student focused book.
It sounds like a good mixture. And then I gotta look up Magneto in a wheelchair so I can cosplay as him sometime. I could do like it, but yeah, but yeah, it's always. I mean, I know with all the X-Men reboots, like they do every few years, it can get a little tiring to keep up with. But I think finding the characters that you're interested in, want to explore. This one sounds like a lot of fun, so I'm interested.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Are we
Awesome.
ready to move on?
Let's go ahead. Got a couple more to get through. All right, so this is a big one. I will say this is one I'm late to the party on. I feel like Andy, have you read Last Ronin?
I have not. I'm sorry to say.
Okay. No worries. It's yeah. It's just like it's one of those big blockbuster books from last years, and I'll get my background with it is I did pick up the first issue when it came out, but it is like an oversized format and physically hard for me to hold. So like I held on, and same with the graphic novel version too. It's just like physically I couldn't hold that, and I knew I heard nothing but rave reviews. I love the concept. I knew that this is a Ninja Turtles book that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird conceived back in like late 80s, early 90s, and yeah, had written together. And then when IDW was doing the comics, or has been for the last like really decade or so or more, they did this Last Ronin in, I think it came out 2020, I want to say, or around there. And so they took the concept that Eastman and Laird had laid out, rewrote it, and finally brought it to life. And but this summer, I got a humble bundle of Ninja Turtles books that included this one, and so finally got a chance to read it. And it is just like as amazing as everyone says it is. Like I know there are those like books, blockbuster books and movies that are like everyone's like, you got to read this, you got to see this, and like sometimes those can be overhyped, but in this case, it 100% lives up to the hype here. So just a little, I don't know, Andy, I don't know how familiar you are with it, or like, or well, just curious, what's kind of your background with Ninja Turtles?
You know, I was into the Ninja Turtles as a kid, mostly the cartoon.
Yeah.
You know, in the late '80s, and so I was big into that, and that was probably about it, right?
Gotcha.
You know,
Yeah.
that cartoon came and went, and well, the movies, the first couple live action movies, also I was pretty into, but yeah, you know. So I've not really kept up with like the lore of the Ninja Turtles or things that have developed. But I was playing last Sunday. I told you I took my son out to lunch for his birthday, and we went to a restaurant that has video games at every table, and we were playing Shredder's Revenge, the latest Ninja Turtle. So yeah, so watched the cartoon and the first couple movies. 30-year gap, played a video game last week.
Hey, well, that's the thing about Ninja Turtles. It has such like a big legacy, and part of the reasons I'm doing a deep dive right now is because Kevin Eastman will be back at NC Comic Con in November, and so
Cool.
I met him in 2018 when he came to our show. Nicest guy, but yeah, I wanted to do like I'd read some of the IDW books, but because my background is I grew up with the movies. The 2000s cartoon, like that's the thing. When you say like which cartoon, it's like there's so many, but mine was the kind of like early 2000s. Like it was very serialized, and I had all the action figures from that. Grew up on that one, and then one I highly recommend too is the movie that came out last year, Mutant Mayhem, animated one. That one was awesome. But that's the thing about Ninja Turtles. There's so many different properties. But the thing about the IDW comics is that while they're still really fun, they are a lot more gritty and more in sync with sort of the original vision of Eastman and Laird, where because I mean Ninja Turtles was very much inspired by like Frank Miller's Daredevil and Ronin and all these books of the time that, and it was kind of like yeah, Daredevil in particular, it was kind of satirizing. But like if you go back to the original comics, like they're very violent, very dark, black and white. And it's funny that they've inspired so many kids shows and stuff because the original Turtles Zero is quite more gritty, and the IDW books are a lot more in that line. But particularly Last Ronin, which okay, I'll go ahead and get to. But so this was kind of conceived as the end game for the Ninja Turtles by its original creators, and like I said, was brought to life a few years ago through IDW. And Eastman worked with Tom Waltz, the writer of the IDW comics, and a series of artists to bring this book to life. And it's set in a post-apocalyptic future where Shredder's grandson has taken over New York, and all but one turtle, all of them are gone except for one. Splinter's gone too, and most of the characters you know and love. And it doesn't reveal. I'm still gonna hold off on spoiling who it is because I think that's part of the like joy of that first book is it reveals who the surviving turtle is at the very end. Because you don't know, especially based on the cover, because he has all the weapons of all four. So they intentionally keep the identity a secret until the end, and then they go back and tell what happened and how everything fell apart. And you also get a fan favorite character is still living by the you see by the end of the first book, and this whole story plays out. But it is just so it's a very heavy R-rated book. Very just violent, post-apocalyptic, gritty, and the art is just so spectacular. I can't put it into words, but and also if you get the trade too, Robert Rodriguez, filmmaker, wrote the introduction, and it really feels like it could be that kind of blockbuster. It actually is in development now as a live action movie, which I'm very excited for. But yeah, it is just like. The thing about this book is, regardless of your background with the Turtles, I think it's very accessible to any number of readers because if you come in with just a basic understanding of like the characters and who they are, it's like a Dark Knight Returns kind of like just a staple of the genre or of the medium where you see this totally different vision and this totally different setting for these characters, but you're just gripped by this emotional harrowing story, and you follow the last of the turtles, and it's interspersed with flashbacks, like I said, of how they got to be this way and how Shredder's grandson came to power, this long-standing war. It's a really as tragic as it is, and as like emotional. It's also just such a wonderful tribute to the Turtles' legacy, and it's very much meant for longtime fans, for newer fans. It's just like, oh, it's so good. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess. Well, Andy, do you have a favorite turtle?
Oh, I was a Donatello kid growing
Yeah, that
up.
was great. Yeah. He's always like up there for me too. Like Leonardo is my favorite, but I kind of go back and forth between them. But Donatello is the best. But this one you really get to see all the different personalities interact, and it's just I hate like sometimes I hate gushing over books because I'm just like I just sound like rambling like talk about this is so good, it's so great. But I also, for those who haven't read it, I don't want to spoil too much because again, even just spoiling the identity of who survives, that's a treat better left to experiencing it. But it's one where even though there's 100 issues preceding it, you don't have to read that whole run to jump on this one. It's very much like I said, an end game type story where set in the future, and you can, and it has a clear arc and everything. So because what I'm doing right now is actually like I read Last Ronin, and then now I'm going back through because the Humble Bundle came with like 16 volumes of like omnibuses of all the IDW runs. So I'm going back through those, and it's such a great companion to it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, Andy, are you into any of the kind of like post-apocalyptic, or even like Miller Daredevil, stuff like that, the kind of like grittier 80s stuff that is very much a heavy influence on this one.
Yeah, I mean that's not my my go-to, but I've certainly read
Yeah,
some of that stuff, and yeah, I when it's done well, it's done well,
yeah,
and it can be good
yeah.
stuff. So yeah,
And I think that's the thing about this one is just like it's there's so much emotion poured into it, whether like it's not just all battle scenes and everything, even though the battles are so there's such depth and so much like uh, heart and soul poured into them. But I think my favorite moments from this are well, I'll spoil the okay. One of the like legacy characters that is in this is April O'Neil. As always, her and her daughter are key players in the series, and their interactions with the surviving turtle play out very much in a legacy sense. And I love that she almost is kind of like an older Sarah Connor sort of in this as like a rebel survivor. I love what they do there. And yeah, they form this underground resistance, and it's got it's some of the things it's like you've seen before in other stories like this, but it doesn't make it any less compelling because it is so well written. The art is just spectacular. And it's also, I know there is a sequel running right now. And then, like I said, there's a live action movie in development. So I just love that Eastman and Lard came up with the script and the idea back in, like I said, late 80s, early 90s, and had this as the end game for this originally. And now they get to explore it all these years later. Of course, I'm sure, there will be reboots and stuff, but if like this was the definitive ending to their story, I think it would be a glorious one. I mean, it just like it captures the legacy so well. It captures art and spirit. It explores what it's like to put, a character who you're so used to just like eating pizza and having a good time, and they're all just like these teenage, mutant superheroes, and now he's jaded and he's lost his family, and how does he reconcile with that, and how does that affect you as a reader? It just, it grips you into the story so well. And it's never cheap, but yeah, it's just like, you wouldn't, especially if you like your only exposure to the Turtles is, like I said, from one of the, like the more kiddie cartoons or whatever. There's nothing wrong with those, but it's just like, if you might be surprised to read like a Old Man Logan, Dark Knight Returns kind of treatment toward the Turtles, but it works so well and it is so good. So can't recommend it enough. It's excellent storytelling all around. It's one I'm definitely going to revisit. And now I'm going on a Turtles binge, going through all the IDW comics, and I'm really excited what kind of media they do. And I think part of the reason they're making the Last Ronin movie, not only the success of the comic, but the Mutant Mayhem movie last year did really well too. So
right.
I think people are ready for kind of like more versions of these characters and see what else they can do. So
cool. Sounds excellent.
Yeah. So that's my pick, and then we'll get to your next one.
Sure. And while I'm at it, Christian jumped into the comments to help me remember that Juggernaut and Magic are also on the Uncanny roster.
Oh, okay, cool. Very cool. Nice.
They haven't done a whole lot yet, which was my excuse for not having remembered them. But yes, they definitely are part of the team.
Nice.
But we'll move on to Power Fantasy #1 by Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard. I'm going to brag a little bit. I actually had the chance. I took a trip to... Oh, the thing is going to thwart me. I had the opportunity to take a trip to London last month. And it just so happened that they were launching this book while we were there. And there's a big comic book store in London called Forbidden Planet. And they had a signing. Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard and Ryan Hughes were all there. And so I got to meet them, and that was really exciting. Kieran Gillen has been one of my favorite writers for a few years now, and so it was really cool to get to meet him and have him sign a couple of my X-Men comics. It was especially fun because the guy in front of me in line was having a chat with Gillen about how this new book, The Power Fantasy, was X-Men but better, or X-Men done right, or something along those lines is what this guy said. And Kieran was like, well, it's X-Men maybe done with fewer restrictions or whatever like that. And then I come along and just hand him a stack of X-Men trades to sign. But he was very kind about it, and And so then I got to go, got home and read the book, and uh, it was more X Men than I expected, even after that conversation. So the guy in the cover there, the big face facing you, Etienne, is kind of the main character for this first issue, and he's definitely like a Charles Xavier sort of uh, you know ultimate level telepath kind of character. Um, and the book kind of explores some of uh, the ethical dilemmas or the ethical issues that come up with having that level of power. So the setup, it's you know I think we're still going to learn more about the setup in subsequent issues. Issue number 2 comes out this Wednesday, so we still just have only the first issue. But this is a world where there are superpowered people, and there have been for a while. The first few pages of issue 1 are in 1966, and then we jump ahead to 1999 and see those same characters but older. So this is a world where there are superpowered people, and there have been for quite some time. And it seems like there is a handful, maybe half a dozen, give or take, who are very, very powerful, like Etienne, who has a like in X-Men parlance would be he's the Omega level, telepath. I don't know if they have have a similar kind of name here, but then there's a whole bunch of other people who have more minor powers. There's a character who has like sparkly fingers or something like that. So it's kind of that like Grant Morrison concept of not everybody who's a mutant gets a power that will be handy in a fight against Galactus kind of thing. Um, and so yeah, so kind of grappling with what does it mean to be to have that much power as a single person. What are your responsibilities? Um, what are the things that because you can do something different, you have to just kind of approach life and the world differently. And it's definitely playing on the concept of superpower. I mean, there's a again, borrowing the X-Men lingo, there's a data page in the comic that literally just lists out the definitions of superpower, and one of them is having extraordinary abilities, like a superhero. But one of them is being a nation with a substantial military force that is overwhelming relative to the uh, military force of other countries, right? So it's playing with the idea of superpowers in the sense of like the United States and Russia and China and or the Soviet Union formerly, and that kind of superpower concept, but also then superpowers of being a telepath or being whatever. Um, and yeah, so it it will be interesting to see where that goes. There's not a there's not a ton of plot in the first issue, and what there is, I don't necessarily want to spoil either. It kind of the first half is mostly a conversation between two characters about should we conquer the world? Should we take over the world? We have the power to, and if we would be benevolent dictators, would that be the best thing for the world? Or should we do something else? Should we hold back, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that kind of like heady conversation, and then the plot kind of kicks in the second half of the issue, and some pretty significant things happen. Like I said, I don't want to spoil. But if you read any of Kieran Gillen's Xavier focused issues of Immortal X-Men during the second half or the last third of the Krakoa era, and that there was a bit where Charles Xavier talks about how uh, the Marvel universe, the Earth 616 will never face a nuclear holocaust because Charles Xavier has secretly and subtly planted various telepathic suggestions that if anybody ever gets close to pushing the button on total nuclear war, they just won't be able to. He's made sure that that's just not going to happen. And he talks about some other things that like he kind of does either on the down low or did one time to kind of fix things or whatever. Like nobody ever knows about it. Nobody previously nobody ever talked about or mentioned, and he's never brought up. And he's just sort of monologuing about this as a narration in the book. So even even within the Earth 616, nobody else knows that he's done this. We the readers are privy to his inner monologue and learn that he's done these things. So if you read any of that, or if I just spoiled it for you,
No, no,
um,
it's okay. Yeah.
those kinds of things kind of come up here as well, like those issues of what how can a telepath influence world events and so forth. Um, so yeah, it is because I'm a fan of Kieran Gillen and the big heavy concepts that he likes to play with, and he's done really well with them in the past. I'm curious to see where this is going. Um, Absent that, just as a first issue, I don't know if it would have grabbed me quite the same way. Like I said, I was a little bit surprised with how strong of an X-Men vibe it had. Some of the characters are definitely they talk about being atomics, um, or part of the nuclear family, so they're clearly meant to be mutants, and playing on all of that. Um, so, or in the same kind of vein of having some kind of genetic mutation that gave them these powers. So yeah, so if you're an X-Men fan, right, there's a lot that will be familiar. You may feel like it's too familiar, and you're looking for something different, or it may feel comfortable and a fresh angle on things that you already were interested in. But yeah, I will definitely keep an eye on this book in one form or another, like I said, because I really think that Gillen does well with these kinds of big concepts, and is good at planning out a story and bringing it to a conclusion. Even if it's sort of in an ongoing format. I think Wicked and Divine did that very well.
Yeah.
It had an ending. It knew where it was going. They definitely kind of improvised as they went along based on how successful the book was. I think there was a possibility that it could have ended much sooner if they needed to, or it could have gone longer if they wanted to, whatever. But there was a definite arc, a definite concrete, discrete story that he wanted to tell, or he and McKelvey wanted to tell, and they did that very well. Um, he's done some other smaller miniseries kind of things that I think have worked very well. So yeah, I think uh, based on that track record, there's reason to think that if you buy in that this will go somewhere, and Gillen has enough clout to land it where he wants to land it, and without it getting canceled, halfway through or whatever, running out of steam. Um, so yeah, that's those are my thoughts on the power fantasy.
Ooh, this one I definitely want to check out. I mean, it definitely has a Grant Morrison vibe, especially like Doom Patrol, stuff like that. And I love Karen Gillan as well. I mean, his Vader run is one of my favorites, but
Yes.
also we'll get the Divine. And yeah, the art looks fantastic. So I mean, I'm okay. Like, I don't know, when they do creator-owned books that they kind of sell as, oh, like X-Men, but kind of unfiltered, or like Superman but dark or whatever. I'm never opposed to that. I think I mean, like, if they want to do that, then like, or want to tell kind of stories that are very similar to like an IP that they can't really do. They have restrictions with the big two, and they want to kind of take that concept and do it more in a more free creator on space. I'm all for that. So I think this sounds very compelling, and the art looks fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't probably say enough about the art, but yes, it is a very very distinctive style, and it kind of grabs you. That the colors are very striking. The colors are by Clayton Cowles. Um, there's some interesting character designs, and that they're very distinctive characters right away. We do see glimpses of some of the other folks that I think will get more developed as the book goes on. So yeah, it is a very visually engaging book as well.
Yeah.
My art critique of comics still leaves something to be desired, but yeah,
I thought of it too. I'm just like, I mean, sometimes I can describe a style as like more realistic, gritty, or, like something like Scotty Young, where it's like a more animated kind of stuff. But beyond that, I'm terrible. I'm describing like I'm just like, oh, it looks great. It's really engaging. So yeah, I'm with you there.
cool.
But yeah, awesome. Well, wrapping up here, Andy, these are some great picks, but do you want to, out of the ones you talked about tonight, or maybe another, any book you really want to recommend for listeners and viewers?
Um, I think of the two that I talked about, I would go with the power fantasy, just because the X-Men don't really need me to do more marketing for them. Power fantasy #2 comes out Wednesday, and The other thing I was thinking about was on a previous episode we were talking about the Chip Zdarsky Batman books,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I hadn't gotten into that, and so I was just kind of dipping my toe in there for that episode. And I've gone back and caught up on the first couple trades of that run, and that was really awesome too. And we were talking about I think it was issue 150, and there was a focus on like one of the henchmen from one of Batman's villains, and I thought that was a fun story. And it turns out that's kind of an angle that Chip Zdarsky is really exploring in a lot of that run of sort of what does it mean to be a henchman for some of uh, these different crazy villains that Batman has. So that I really like that take on it. And so yeah, that was just another book that's been on my mind.
Very cool.
Yeah,
He's a great writer. And I mean, his Batman and Daredevil stuff and creator own. So yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I've liked a lot of his books.
Very cool. Well, yeah, I will recommend Nice House by the Sea for tonight. It's I recommend both tonight, but particularly it's Halloween season. If you want to try out a good horror book, I definitely again read Nice House on the Lake first, but By the Sea, love the first issue. Cannot recommend that one enough. So give that one a go. And still last run, of course, but like you said too, I don't think the Ninja Turtles really need marketing for me in particular. But it is a great book though, and lives up to the hype. So
Cool.
very cool. Well, Andy, this has been a blast as always. And you know, I don't have the Patreon list with me, but if you are a Patreon, huge shout out to you. We are super grateful for your support. And if you're listening for the first time, we hope you able to come back. We put out episodes regularly on our platforms, talking about both, you know, theology and themes related to geek culture, and like this, just what we're geeking out on, what we're enjoying. So we are grateful for all of you, and we hope you all have a great night. If you're watching this live, so thank you very much, and remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.